Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our FSSC 22000 update for version 6 this afternoon. So the webinar today is going to take no longer than 60 minutes. If you have any questions, please type those in the chat box and I will do my best to answer them all at the end. If I don't get time, I will answer them and get the answers to you. And the recording of the webinar will be circulated either today or tomorrow. So my name is Maria. I am the Food Certification Manager at NQA. I've worked in the certification industry for over 18 years now, specialising in food safety from farm to fork standards, and worked with many clients and standard owners and stakeholders in my time during my career. My role as the Food Certification Manager is to oversee the accreditation and certification of NQA's food safety management system standards. I look after this globally whilst ensuring technical knowledge and changes within the industry are communicated and cascades to clients, stakeholders and auditors. What are we going to cover today? So what will you learn? I will give a brief overview of FSSC 22000. We're going to look at the background of the changes with a timeline, which is going to include changes and updates to food chain categories, audit durations, the updated FSSC requirements, and the new FSSC requirements. So what is FSSC? FSSC 22000 offers a certification scheme for the auditing and certification of food safety management systems to ensure the provision of safe food, feed and packaging to the consumer goods industry. FSSC 22000 consists of 3 elements: ISO 22000-2018, plus the sector-specific PRP technical standard, for example, ISO 22002/Part 1 for food manufacturing, plus the FSSC additional requirements. FSSC 22000 is benchmarked by the GFSI, the Global Food Safety Initiative, and the aim of this is to standardise globally all food safety standards. So FSSC 22000, we are now going into version 6 of the standard. The background of the updates and the new version, one of the elements is to continually review and update the standard to ensure relevance and iron out any clauses or requirements which needed further interpretation. And it's also an inclusion of ISO 22003 Part 1 2022, which is the accreditation standard for certification bodies to offer certification services for FSSC 22000. Version 6 was published in April 2023. We are now in the period of training and transition of management systems to the new standard, and version 6 is applicable for all FSSC 22,000 audits from the 1st of April 2024. So FSSC version 6 is now published and available to download on the FSSC website. The main changes are the incorporation of updated requirements from 2003. There's updates to food chain categories, audit durations, and there's some FSSC additional requirements that have been updated, and there's a number of new requirements in the FSSC additional requirements section. So the updates to food chain categories. Category C1, processing of perishable animal products, has been split into C0, animal primary conversion, and C1, processing of perishable animal products. So existing scopes for C1 that included the slaughter or the bearing of the animals now come under C0. Category C2, processing of perishable plant products, has now been split into B3, which is the pre-process handling of plant products, and C2, processing of perishable plant-based products. So B3 is going to include the harvesting of various crops and also the processing of fruits and vegetables which do not change. So things that are not cut up and repackaged, so apples, oranges, grapes, bananas, anything that is not going to be changed. So if a melon is going to be cut up and chilled, that would come under B3. If it's going to be sold as a whole melon, it comes under C2. So B3 is a new category altogether, and C2 has been updated. The previous codes for animal feed and pet food have had a change. So D1 and D2, D2 no longer exists, it's just category D, and this is only going to include feed and animal food processing for food-bearing species. It's going to exclude pet food. Pet food is going to now be covered under the relevant food chain category, depending on the finished product characteristics. The transport and storage codes, G1, which was perishable, and G2, which is ambient stable, have now been incorporated into one category, which is just transport and storage services. C4, which is the processing of ambient stable products, has now been split into three categories. C4A, which is canned products, C4B, which is snacks, cereals, dried goods, and C4C, which is non-canned wet products such as beverages, sauces, oils. Okay, so let's dive into the updated FSSC requirements. So just to mention, there's been no changes to the requirements in ISO 22000 or the PRP standards. The updates are to the FSSC requirements. So all of these have been updated. Let's dive into the first one. So Requirement 251, management of services and purchase materials. There's now an addition into this category, into this clause for category I, which is food packaging, and is with regarding to the use of recycled packaging as a raw material, ensuring that the finished product packaging materials meet legal and customer requirements. Requirement 252, product labelling and printed materials. Where a claim, for example, allergen, nutritional, method of production, chain of custody, etc., is made on the product label or packaging, the organisation shall maintain evidence of validation to support the claim. For food chain category I, procedures shall be established and implemented to ensure that the printed material meets applicable customer and legal requirements. So where a claim is made, such as the one specified on the screen, gluten-free, for example, you must have evidence that you validated that claim. Requirement 2532, Food Defence Plan, has had an addition specific to food chain category F2, which is a broker trader who shall ensure that their suppliers all have food defence plans in place. So similarly to the previous requirement change, food fraud plan requirement 2542, that category F2 shall also ensure that their suppliers have a food fraud mitigation plan in place. So requirement 256, management of allergens. This has been expanded significantly from the previous version of the FSSC standard, and it applies to all food chain categories. So all organisations shall have a documented allergen management plan, and that should include a list of the allergens handled on site, a risk assessment covering potential sources of allergen cross-contamination, identification and implementation of control measures to reduce or eliminate the risk of cross-contamination, validation and verification of these control measures. Precautionary or warning labels shall only be used when the outcome of a risk assessment identifies allergen cross-contamination as a risk to the consumer. The use of such warning labels does not exempt the organisation from implementing the necessary controls or undertaking verification testing. All personnel shall receive allergen awareness training relevant and specific to their area of work. The allergen management plan shall be reviewed at least annually, following changes, product recalls, withdrawals, when trends in industry show contamination of similar products relating to allergens. For Category D, animal feed, where there is no allergen-related legislation in country of sale, this requirement may be indicated as not applicable. Requirement 257, environmental monitoring. Previously, we've found that this requirement is often wrongly interpreted. The requirement has been expanded to add the need to review at least annually for continued effectiveness and when the following triggers occur. Significant changes relating to products, processes, or legislation. When no positive testing results have been obtained over an extended period of time. Trends in out of specification microbiological results related to both intermediate and finished products, not fished products. A repeat detection of pathogens during routine environmental monitoring. And when there are incidents relating to other products produced by the organisation. And just a note there that swabbing, testing and monitoring is a requirement of the standard. Transport, storage and warehousing requirement 2510. For food chain category F1, retail and wholesale, the organisation shall ensure that product is transported and delivered under conditions which minimise the potential for contamination. So for other food chain categories, when tankers are used for transportation of final product, organisations shall have a risk-based plan to address tank cleaning. It shall consider potential sources of cross-contamination, control measures and cleaning validation. Measures shall be in place to assess the cleanliness of the tanker at the point of reception prior to loading. For organisations receiving raw materials in tankers, the following shall be included in the supplier agreement as a minimum to ensure product safety and prevent cross-contamination. Tank cleaning validation, restrictions linked to prior use and applicable control measures relevant to the product being transported. Requirement 2511, hazard control and measures for preventing cross-contamination. Previously, this requirement was only specified for category I, packaging. This requirement is now relevant to B3 and the food primary processing C1, 2, 3 and 4. The organisation shall have specific requirements in place where packaging is used to impart or provide a functional effect on food, for example, shelf life extension. There's a new requirement for category D, animal feed. The organisation shall have procedures in place to manage the use of ingredients that can have an adverse effect on animal health. For all food chain categories excluding F2, broker trader, the organisation shall have a risk assessment in place to determine the need and type of detection equipment used for detection of foreign matter. A documented procedure shall be in place for the management and use of such equipment, and the organisation shall have controls in place for the management of all breakages linked to physical contamination, for example, metal and hard plastic. Product design and development requirement 2513. There's been an addition that where a ready-to-cook product is produced, the cooking instructions shall be validated to ensure food safety is maintained. So now we're going to have a look at the new FSSC requirements. And just a reminder here that you need to plan how you're going to implement these requirements. You need to do it, you need to check it, and you need to act upon it. So new requirement 258, food safety and quality culture. This is applicable for all food chain categories. And this was previously covered in section 5 of ISO 22000 under leadership. The organisation shall have a food safety culture plan. Leadership shall establish, implement and maintain food safety and quality culture objectives as part of the management system. The following shall be addressed as a minimum: communication, training, employee feedback and engagement, performance measurement of defined activities covering all areas of the organisation impacting on food safety and quality. Requirement 259, quality control, also applicable to all food chain categories. In addition to ISO 22000 clauses 5.2 and 6.2, the organisation shall establish and implement a quality policy and quality objectives. Quality parameters for finished product, product quality added to inputs to management review and internal audits, quality control parameters established and implemented to ensure meeting customer and legal requirements, including calibration and verification of the equipment used for quality control. Line startup and changeover procedures established and implemented to ensure products, including packaging and labelling, meet applicable customer and legal requirements, including controls in place to ensure labelling and packaging from previous runs have been removed from the line. Requirement 2515, equipment management, applicable to all food chain categories. This is in addition to clause 824 of ISO 22000. Have a documented purchase specification in place which addresses hygienic design, legal and customer requirements and the intended use of equipment, including product handled. The supplier shall provide evidence of meeting the purchase specification prior to installation. Establish and implement a risk-based change management process for new equipment and or changes to existing equipment, which shall be adequately documented, including evidence of successful commissioning. Possible effects on existing systems shall be assessed and control measures determined and implemented. Requirement 2516, food loss and waste, applicable to all food chain categories. Organisations shall have a documented policy and objectives detailing the strategy to reduce food loss and waste. You shall have controls in place to manage products donated to ensure that the products are safe for consumption. You shall manage surplus or byproducts intended as animal feed to prevent contamination. These processes shall comply with legislation, be maintained, and not have negative impact on food safety. Two 2517, communication requirements. This was previously included as part of scheme rules, and you would have signed your application or your contract with certification body to say that you would abide by this rule. This is now a requirement in the standard, and it will be audited. The organisation shall inform the certification body within 3 days of the commencement of event situations listed below as part of the emergency preparedness and response process. Serious events, even, which impact the FSMS, legality, or the integrity of the certification, including situations that pose a threat to food safety or certification integrity as a result of a force majeure, natural or man-made disasters. For example, war, strike, terrorism, crime, flood, pandemic, public recalls, withdrawals, calamities, outbreaks, actions imposed by regulatory authorities, legal proceedings, and fraudulent activities. So as a summary, the FSSC 22000 version 6 was published in April 2023. It is available to download for free from the FSSC website, www.fssc.com. And certified organisations need to implement the new requirements and review existing management system for the updated requirements. And all FSSC 22000 audits will be to version 6 from the 1st of April 2024. And I have got through that extremely fast. I'm very sorry, I know I speak very quickly. Does anybody have any questions? I have received one question saying that they couldn't hear me. I hope you've all been able to hear me. Okay. Okay, I have a question. The question that I've had is that British companies, do they need to confirm to do this too? If you are being certified to FSSC 22000, yes, your audit your audit after the 1st of April or from the 1st of April this year will be to the new version of the FSSC 22000 standard. So you need to start implementing your changes ready for your next audit. I have another question. Okay, the next question is with regards to the BRC standard, that it is an equivalent of FSSC 22000. Yes, the BRC standard for global standard for food and FSSC 22000, they are both benchmarked by GFSI. The requirements that have come in through 22003 and the updated GFSI requirements will be cascaded to both to all GFSI benchmark standards. So the requirements are slightly different in the BRC standard, but you will find equivalence between the two standards. I hope that answers your question. And another question saying, can I share the presentation? Yes, I've seen a couple of typos in there, so I will update that and correct it, but the presentation will go out to everybody who registered to attend the webinar. I did also notice a boo-boo in my presentation. At the beginning, I did say that we would talk about audit durations, and the slide appears to have been removed. The audit durations for version 6 of FSSC 22000 and also for ISO 22000 have been updated. There are new rules with regard to the FSSC additional requirement time that's added. That has changed. It's doubled, added to the ISO 22000 duration. So you will do expect to have possibly an increased duration from now on. Okay, if there's no other questions, if you didn't get a chance to type your question, please feel free to send your questions to the marketing email address that you will receive the presentation from, and I will do my best to answer those to you directly. But thank you for your attention this afternoon. Thank you for attending, and see you soon. Thank you.